Load shedding. It can be very, very confusing, and all the technical terms that get thrown around all the time, you know, generating units, capacity shortages, OCGTs, nuclear power, it all gets like sort of muddled very, very quickly. Stage 6 has hit South Africa once again, and whenever this happens, Eskom comes out and they have these media briefings and they explain a whole lot of very complicated terms: capacity shortages, diesel shortages, water shortages, shortage of everything, but it's very hard to navigate all of this. So I'm going to try and explain why we have load shedding. What is the actual problem? And I'm going to try and do this with some numbers that we can all understand and that you can, you know, maybe talk about at your dinner conversation after watching this video, if that isn't too boring. So South Africa has a total installed capacity of 46 gigawatts, but 6 gigawatt of this is peaking power. What do I mean by that? So Eskom has 14 power stations around the country that are only used in periods of peak power demand. So in winter, early in the mornings, late in the afternoon. In summer, there is still a peak in the mornings and the afternoons, but it's not as big as in winter. So these are what we call open cycle gas turbines, OCGTs. They burn diesel. In the last 5 months, up to September 2022, they've burned 7.7 billion rands worth of diesel. They are also pumped storage schemes. Now, pumped storage schemes are dams, an upper and a lower with a generating unit in between, and the water is effectively pumped from the upper dam down to the lower dam, and the flow of the water generates electricity. But what happens at the end of the night, when your peak is over, the water that is over here has to come back up here. And electricity is needed for that pumping process, which isn't always possible when you don't have enough capacity in the grid. So how does load shedding happen? We're going to take the information shared by Eskom on Sunday, the 18th of September, because it's quite current and it's a very clean sort of example of what's going on. So over the past 2 weeks, Eskom has lost a total of 90 generating units across its fleet of about, I'd say about 86 units. They've had 90 breakdowns over the past 2 weeks. That's starting from the 4th of September up until Sunday. Now, a lot of these were returned to service. They were fixed and they were brought back online. But the resulting sort of breakdowns have resulted, you know, in a 4 gigawatt shortfall, or a 4,000 megawatt shortfall. I'm going to explain why that shortfall is important. So, taking away the peaking power stations, the dams and the OCGTs, you're left with 40 gigawatts, or 40,000 megawatts of generating capacity. Some of this is nuclear, some of this is coal-fired, but mostly, you know, rough estimate, I think it's about 80, 85%, even 90% coal-fired power stations. Now, over the last couple of weeks, Eskom has lost 7 gigawatt, or 7,000 megawatt to planned maintenance. It's summer. Eskom generally does more maintenance in summer because in winter, obviously, more electricity is needed. But there's also been 10,000 gigawatt as of Sunday breakdowns, unplanned breakdowns. Eskom did not foresee these breakdowns. They are feverishly working very hard to try and fix them. And then there is a very interesting one, 4 gigawatt unavailable partial load losses. Now, partial load losses, in simple terms, let's say a power station has a cooling tower that hasn't been appropriately maintained over a number of years. It can no longer effectively cool down the water that is coming from, you know, the high heat, high pressure steam that is used to drive these turbines. It's extremely hot. I think it's in excess of 500 degrees Celsius. I may be speaking under correction. This water needs to be cooled down before it can be introduced back into the system, back into the boiler to be created into steam again, because obviously steam is not a liquid. So partial load losses are, let's say a unit at Kriel, 720 megawatt unit. It cannot run at its full 720 megawatt capacity because the cooling tower is not capable of cooling the steam down properly again. So they run it at lower, maybe at 450 or 400, and that then results in a partial load loss. Eskom will take that extra 250 megawatt, they work it out in megawatt hours lost, and this contributes to, you know, the unavailability that's all over the grid. Now, those who passed maths in high school will be able to tell us that from 46 minus 6 leaves us with 40, but then we've got, so this is 40. That's what's left after you take away the peaking power stations. Then we've got 7 planned maintenance, 7 gigawatt. PCLF, planned capability loss factor, planned maintenance. You've got 10 gigawatt plus 4 gigawatt. That's your breakdowns and your partial load losses to give you 14 gigawatt unplanned capability loss factor. So that leaves you with 21 gigawatt is unavailable. It's just out. Eskom cannot use it. It cannot be brought back online anytime soon. And we're in trouble. Because what's left now is 19 gigawatt that is theoretically available. And I say theoretically because the 19 that remains, because of all these breakdowns and planned maintenance, is working very, very hard to keep up. Plus your 6 gigawatt of peaking power, which Eskom was unable to use on Sunday because the dams weren't full enough and there wasn't enough diesel stocks at the OCGTs. Now you have 25, right? 25 gigawatt. Theoretically. Actually, you only have 19 available, plus some extra with the peaking power, if they can run them because of the dam and the diesel levels. So you're working with, let's say, 25 on paper. Peak demand for Sunday, the 18th of September, was 26 gigawatts. Now you see the problem. Theoretically, Eskom could not run this 6 gigawatts, so it was left with 19. That's a gap of 5,000 gigawatt, or 5,000 megawatt, or 5 gigawatt, right? That's with some of the peaking stations running. The gap was around 5, 6, and that gave us stage 6 load shedding. And obviously, you know, 19 to 20 to 26 is 7, but the gap was actually around 5,000 gigawatt. There's an operational reserve of 2,000 that has to be kept in the system. So you're looking at a demand gap, a supply gap of 5,000, gives you around stage 6 load shedding. And I hope that gives you an idea of what's going on. Now you can understand why Eskom has repeatedly said that they need between 4 to 6 gigawatt of new capacity urgently. That helps them plug this gap, and it will buy them a little bit of headroom to start sorting out these problems that result in these massive amounts of breakdowns that repeatedly happen all the time, day after day, giving us load shedding, giving us headaches, and causing immense frustration, not only, you know, from the leadership of government, from the leadership of Eskom, but I think from every single South African.